Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to head into a second of 5 games today. AaB, the team that didn't look good at all, got out forward, and now they beat Natives. What can happen with this team going up against London United, a team with a lot of potential and a total score of 2-3?
It's going to be entertaining because London United, as you mentioned, coming into this one currently 2-3, albeit after their first win against Natives, still now just 1-4. And I think that weirdly enough, this is going to be fairly similar to our last match. We talked a lot about topside priority for rate. I think that this game we're going to have to talk a lot about topside priority for London United. They've got Isagale in the top lane, who has proven to be an incredibly good laner, a very strong carry force for London United, not just in this tournament, but also in previous seasons as well for the London New squad, has been looking exceptional. And we've seen on the flip side of that, then for AaB, his for Gunkus has not been standing out by quite so much here, has been probably one of the weaker links here in this squad. And to sort of contrast that, their jungler, we have to say, Bobus has been absolutely tearing it up. It's worth noting that AaB themselves haven't had bad early games. It was just that their later stages, their transitional periods of the game were lacking a little bit until they went up against natives and they were able to absolutely slam down on them.
It was a beautiful game to watch. It was AaB finally finding its stride, being able to translate, as you said, that early game into the mid game, into the late game, continuing to win these team fights, even when something like the Samira pick got heavily countered. They made it work, and I'm starting to be pretty impressed with this AaB roster. I feel Gunkus, as you talked about, hasn't had good performance. Let's be honest. A few of the games he's been flat out bad, but in the last game he did decently. He wasn't the reason the team lost, and he was actually, able to put out damage, able to perform well in the team fights alongside his team. So things are starting to click. Ribery is starting to do damage in the fight. Blueband has been consistent all the way throughout. Bobus is continuing to find the early game leads, and AaB, as you have to do against Isagale, are banning the Rengar.
Yeah, he just can't get his hands on this champion. Will carry if he gets Rengar, so that's going to be a staple ban. I love that we're also seeing these bans toward Blueburn from London United. He pulled out a Viagar game and he looked very strong with that one. Corki, just as a champion, is exceptionally strong, so get rid of that one as soon as possible. Also, the Zeri being banned away. Surprised that one slipped through our first game, but taking that away from Ribery is also a very worthwhile pick. Now, with a couple pinches onto the AD carry pool, there's a slight chance that we get to see a Caitlyn first pick, but as I talked about, Caitlyn priority has been a little bit weird, and we'll have to wait and see, because Senna coming through is the first one up on the board. KZ taking that one away first of all. We'll have to wait and see what AaB look to respond with, because there are a lot of junglers open. Lee Sin open, Xin Zhao open. We'll have to wait and see where the players look toward and where their priority lies.
So far, I would like to point out, Tuesday, 5 top laners were banned against Isagale. This time, it will at the most be 4, because there has been that one Jinx ban. And as we are talking about the AD carries, obviously, Senna has been locked in, but the Jhin is the follow-up. Ribery showing off so far that he can play a lot of different style of champions. He can play the more solo, weak step, but he can also play things like Samira in your face, spinning around, dealing the damage. And I think Ribery, considering he's been subbed in due to emergency notice, no, there's no way they're actually doing this. No. Now, Jhin mid has actually been a thing, so I was wondering if it would be happening. But no, they paired up with the Thresh. That's the reason you never get excited for hovers. I got absolutely scammed there.
No, and well, we get the Thresh now down in the bot lane, taking it away from Divinus as well. It's worth remembering that London United just last game pretty much won the game off the back of a Divinus hook, was able to pick out the AD carry, and it was a pick. It was insane. So taking that one away from Divinus, also a very worthwhile pickup. Now we finally get to see a little bit of attraction for the junglers. Xin Zhao is the first pick for Dunlosi here. Doesn't get his hands on his Poppy, but he doesn't need to when Xin Zhao is still quite so strong. Expect to see the support match here. You could go for something like Leona, like the Nautilus, just as a part of a pairing for a farming Senna here. Probably the last patch we get to see it come through, as we got to hear from Chris. But there's also the opportunity to take something fairly highly priced in the solo lanes if they choose to do so. The Rakan comes in as an answer, and to try and punish a Jhin in mobile AD carry, certainly worthwhile. Whenever you pick a Jhin or a Senna though, it's worth noting that from these two compositions, we're not expecting anything that would be classed as typically weak-sided. These two AD carries are very good at setting up their team for success, and in order to enable that fully, you tend to want triple carries on the top side. So I expect that to be the case for the duration of this draft, that we maybe don't get a tank, We don't particularly see the things like a Twisted Fate like Galio, for example, coming out of the mid lane, and we're just going to get some hardcore carry styles.
I like that Viego pick a lot. Something that Blueban has played throughout this play. He's only played Jarvan and Viego as far as I can remember, and as the stats tell me. So I'm happy to see him back on the pick. He's been able to find early game leads on. I do also quickly want to mention before we get back to the bans that Mortifer did get subbed in Tuesday, and he is continuing to play for London United. The exact reason for the change is unknown. We don't know if it's Kusai being away for a week or two, or we don't know how permanent this is. London United hasn't really announced anything, but Mortifer did look pretty good in that one game he's played so far.
He did. And we'll have to see if that can continue for this next one. We do now get to see Vel'Koz ban Blueban. Actually, a little bit of a pocket pick of his, certainly worth the ban away. Now with Camille and Fiora taken away from London United, another 2 top laners banned away from Icy Gale. Shock
Not 5 though.
It's exactly not the 5. We have to see. I imagine here that AaB certainly going to be trying to keep their top lane for that 5th pick, and we've got things open like the Victor to take into the mid lane for Blueban that just seem to fit. The Syndra as well has been a blind pick that a lot of mid laners in Div 2 have been quite happy with, so if that happens to be the case, it would be to nobody's surprise. And there we go, Victor.
As you said, it is going to be that Victor pick. We're still waiting to see what London United will pick up for their new mid laner Mortifer in that mid lane. What are your guesses here?
Well, we could just see a Zillion rerun again, but also things like Syndra, like we said earlier, potentially something a little bit more spicy as well. Things like Syndra, like the LeBlanc still exists here if Mortifer wants to take that, flex his muscles a little bit on that one. Or even the Yone. Now this could be a top lane blind here
it could be
for Icy Gale, because he's played the Yone before. This could still quite easily be a flex between the 2 solo laners, and I imagine that then they're going to want to pick another mid laner, something like the Aurelia, that could go into either solo lane to keep that sort of mystery around them throughout the duration of this draft. The only issue is at the minute they are lacking magic damage severely, so they would like something that can go into that. And with the Vex locked in the mid lane, sort of confirms our assumptions here. Yone up into the top lane, Vex going to be into the mid lane, into the Victor, and as an answer has been a very strong mid laner since release here, the Vex.
Like you're reading their mind, they like AP, they buy AP, oh, no, not buy, they draft AP, precisely as you said. Now though, I am very excited to see what Gunkus will be playing, and it is that said. Wow, so he has played it before this split in their first game. It was a very close first game they did have. They ended up losing it, however. Of course, they only have that one win against natives. So honestly, I think this is a pretty good AaB draft, but Icy Gale still being able to get the carry. It doesn't matter if you ban 5 top laners away, he will find something he can smurf on, and he's just the guy I'm fearing.
And once again, this is another, as we talked about, for London United, another team where we expect to see topside priority. We've got Xin Zhao and Yone as a 2 versus 2 is incredibly scary. Yone as well also has a fair amount of magic damage here. Every other auto dealing 50% magical damage can definitely harm you if you go for too much armor in the stockpiling, but I still think that plated steel caps for Gunkus Bobus probably an absolute must in this one. Mortifier in as that little bit of magic damage source in the mid lane. For London U, they've got a very weak bot, or they've got a very safe bot side here. Not a weak bot side, excuse me, a safe bot side that they can play safe from. They've got healing from Gleaming Quill, healing from the Dawning from the Shadow as well for the ulti, but also the Piercing Darkness from KZ on his Q. So if they take a bad trade from Toon and Ribery, it could very easily get turned back around, and just that sustain war really down on the bot side could go well for London U. For Dunlossie, expect to see him start on the bot side, path his way up toward that top lane, and try and facilitate Icy Gale to success.
So draft is now done. We're obviously just waiting for the loading screen to be done before we can kick off the second game of the evening. But Rude, draft has obviously been complete. You've talked a lot about them, but who do you think got the upper hand here? Who got the best pocket pick, or who is looking most likely to win this game?
That's difficult, because I think that for London U, they've obviously got a very strong top side, and I think that they can utilize that to find some leads. Again, coming down to execution, but I think that AaB themselves, they've got a really strong bot side. Jhin Thresh can definitely look to punish. We've got Bobus as well, who has been incredibly active in the early stages. It really does depend on where he's going to look to become active. Obviously, mid 2 versus 2s for a Victor traditionally go fairly weakly. It's just his late game powerhouse is the reason why he gets picked so frequently, picked so often, and is going to hopefully be able to extend a little bit of an advantage as we get later into the game for AaB. So I think that for overall, the triple carries topside that they've looked to draft has gone well for AaB. Set a very strong weak side laner as well if you want to play toward this bot lane. With the Thresh setup, I think that Bobus has the option to do so.
Talking about the Thresh, I am really happy to see Toon get one of these hook champions. Back in 2019, Toon did win in PEP, which is the biggest land in Denmark. He won that with his school, mainly playing things like the Pike, like the Thresh, these hook champs that can take over the game if you're in your zone, if you're hitting every single death sentence. So I'm very, very happy to see him on something I know he's comfortable with and something he might be able to actually make a game victory.
Yeah, exactly. Thresh is such a field champion as well. Like, sometimes you'll just be in the enemy's head, and sometimes they'll be in yours. And we have to wait and see which one of those outcomes it's going to be here in this game. Because it looks like level 1 here, Duckling, we're going to have a little bit of action, even if it is just some fighting over vision. We've got Bobus pretending as though everything's okay, sat on that top side, but 4 people of AaB working into the bot lane brush, and immediately, there we go, all shown on vision. Expect to see now London United try and collapse a little bit into the top side jungle and place a bit of vision of their own.
We'll spot them out on the wall so they know what is going on, but a little bit of cheese didn't succeed, and Dunlosy Isegale will be able to put down a ward, maybe even look for the invade. Bobus knows they're there, however, and they just put down the ward, walk back out, and they know they have retreated from the situation.
So exchange, not even an exchange of vision particularly here. It is London U coming away with a little bit of extra information. I think that it should be fairly obvious where London U are looking to place Dunlossie, but it looks like I was entirely wrong. And that we're going to see just topside starts on both sides. Maybe Dunlossie's going to look to have a bit of a gank effort upon resetting, taking that first clear into a recall, into a topside look. We'll have to obviously wait and see. But pathing toward the bot lane could mean that Ribery and Toon are in for a bit of action, a bit of sparring early on with the junglers, and I think that that certainly favours the Jhin Thresh in the early stages here relative to Senna Rakan, unless of course Divinus and KZ can put out a little poke in the early stages. Obviously Gleaming Quill will outrange Toon on the Thresh, and the Senna poke as well through minions can certainly exist, but with Fleet Footwork on Ribery, he should be able to sustain the majority of that.
Piercing Darkness is an annoying spell to play against. Nowhere is safe, not even behind the minions, as the 2-minute mark has been reached. I would like to do an update on the junglers. We talked about Dunlosy starting on the bot side, pathing towards the top, but he has taken another decision. He is now pathing towards that bot side, as Bobus is also full clearing his top side. Maybe looking for a level 3 cheese gang here towards the top lane.
Could be possible, honestly. Would sacrifice most likely his clamps down on the bot side, and it looks like with his pathing, he's working his way up here, and putting Icy Gale down early would certainly be a good route to success, particularly since we're expecting this to be the powerful presence point for London U. Has Q3 ready, so a little bit of a dash available, but if he goes forward with this, could be in trouble.
Oh, he could be in trouble. As you say, Bobus has had so much success in the early game. The Spectral Maw connects to, they now have the damage. No, a nice little dance around the damage. And Icy Gale obviously outplays it. Was there any other outcome?
And now look at the warding, though, from AaB down on the bot side. They've got vision of Dunlosy as he heads into this jungle, pushing wave in the bot lane, pushing wave in the mid lane. This could be something that AaB look to respond on and prevent from happening, wasting a lot of time of Dunlosy here. You can see the second he dashes over the wall, AaB leave, they get out of the lane, and good respect from Dunlosy to go, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I don't go for this.
Realized that he bit off more than he could chew. So, AaB, they do have that 5-minute cooldown on Icy Gale to try and punish him. Do you think they'll go for the repeat gank, or do they start looking elsewhere to try and get some leads?
I think it's smart to try and look for a repeat in the top lane. Obviously, it's the area where you burn no flash. Yone can be fairly hard to gank, typically with those dashes, and particularly when he reaches level 6, does become very difficult. But you can see already, flash or no flash, Icy Gale's still going to take these trades, and currently looks pretty good with it. Didn't even have to burn his potion when he was going for that. Dunlossie's here.
His spacing is so good. Now can Gungus outplay the gank? He doesn't have the W. Still picks up the first blood and make it a 1-for-1. London United, they lose their star man.
They do, but they get a good kill on the top side. CS advantage in the Yone's favor, despite the gank here, and the wave is going to be in a slightly better position for Icy Gale. He may not even have to burn his TP to get back to this lane state, which would obviously give a decent advantage over to the London United top laner. He comes back with double longsword. You can see Gunkus actually comes back with slightly more overall, gets himself the longsword cloth and some boots. In terms of combat stats, maybe not quite the most. Toon.
That sentence connects, and there's the deadly flourish. The cancel did come through on the first charge of the battle dance. However, there is 2 of them, and Bobas shows himself. Now they know that he's nowhere near the top side if they want to go for a repeat gank. Drake spawning in 10 seconds might look for that.
Looks like it's probably a little too early. Gank 2.
Yeah, very good death sentence, but the grand challenge, or not the grand challenge, the grand entrance will get him out to safety. Ignite did get put down by Toon. They are getting some good damage on Divinus, but not quite there where they could take him down. Heal still available for KZ.
This is where we get to see the sustain of a Senna Khan lane really start to thrive and show itself off, because you can quite easily sustain yourself back up, and you can already see he was about 30% HP. If you look on the left-hand side of your screens there, about 80%, 90% already to get himself back up to that HP threshold. Icy Gale certainly struggling with the wave state a little bit, but currently in a fine enough position to keep picking up farm, keep picking up that CS and gold to become a very scary late game presence. Obviously, Yone, his ulti in the late stages can be quite easily dodged with a flash, which is a fair amount of his damage. But if he's able to get on top of Ribery, of Blueburn, a lot of trouble their way.
Icy Gale so good at juking that facebreaker with his own soul unbound. It is a joy to see this man pilot. He auto spaces so well. Bobas, though, still on the top side. He might say, yeah, you have good auto spacing, but can you win a 2v1?
They wanted to go for this before Ice Gale hit 6. Unfortunately, he's just dinged that, and now the dive or any form of gank is just even harder. Divinus is kind of eating these hooks. Fortunately, they appear to go with his diet quite well, as he can just sustain them, tank them, and then carry on with his life as though it didn't really happen.
So, 6 minutes in, the Drake is obviously spawned. AaB didn't decide to go for it before when they had that jungler towards the bot side. So now Dunlosi realizes it's a free real estate. They take the Drake.
Yeah, sustained the pressure that Divinus and KZ were sort of eating down on the bot side when Bobas was there, and then obviously turned around and able to push that wave back out now off the crash on the turret. And unfortunately for AaB here, thus far, we talked about Bobas being their sort of focal man, their power point of the early stages. So far, down in CS and hasn't made anything happen to note. Icy Gale's flash is still on cooldown, and you saw he did try and punish that, but hasn't been able to successfully just yet. Hovered around the top side a little bit, but hasn't, again, found that kill. Currently, we sat at an even gold game, and AaB still very much within this one. Victor in the late stages, nothing to scoff at. So this game's still very much up in the air. The only real difference between the two teams is, of course, that first Drake that went the way of London United.
Yeah, but so far, as you said, Bobas hasn't been able to really do too much. But overall, I'm happy with how AaB are playing. Normally, they would have done a good early game, but they're even so far, and they look to be playing safe. They make some plays. They are not over greedy. They're not taking bad fights when they know it's a 70-30 situation. They're like, no, this isn't good enough for us. We want to be sure and make sure we're taking the right choices. As Gunky steps up here, Divinus is rotating off towards the top side, so has to be careful, has the showstopper, has the flash, so should be able to get out to safety as the Herald spawns.
Yeah, and Toon and Flash are also up here, so there's Lantern, there's even more damage coming out, there's plenty of safety tools, safety nets in for Gunkus to make sure that he doesn't go down. You can see already sort of first, second recalls come through from our supports, and they've abandoned their ADCs. I expect this to be the case for the majority of this game. But in this instance, as soon as the AD carries reach level 6, London United do get a really big boost because Senna can affect from cross-map, and KZ already at that marker does have Dawning Shadow, can turn a fight. It's not quite the same effectiveness as a core key, but still a big advantage for London U in that global ulti.
50-50 death sentence yet again connects onto Divinus. He is really a magnet for them these games. 2k HP on the Herald, but the ultimate comes through. Icy Gales look to pick up Blueburn, will be able to with a few more autos. Bobas is gone, that's the jungler out from the side of AaB, and they're losing members left, right, and center. Gunkus picks one up in return, flashes away, and is able to get out, but it is a 2-for-1, and the Herald goes over to London United.
Big win for London United then on the top side, now 700 gold in front. They get the Rift Herald as well that will extend that even further. KZ, with that Dawning Shadow, did have a really large impact during that fight as well. Just gave everybody on his team an extra boost of 150, 200 health. And they were able to come away with the fight by and large at the back end of it. Icy Gale had that really nice flank. There were 3 people from London United pinstering from the top side. Icy Gale just comes in and slams them down from the top side. Double flash over the wall by the solo laners of AaB. They don't get the Rift Herald either, and they lose flash on every single member that was at the fight. So really good luck for London U, who also expend all of their flashes except for Divinus. Still has that engage capabilities as he reaches level 6 fairly soon here as well. But with the Drake spawning in roughly 2 minutes, we expect to see both of these junglers refocus their attention down on the bot side. The fact that London United have got that Rift Herald is going to give them that extra push, that extra source of pressure in a couple of minutes' time. If they want to go for that Drake, they can stick the Herald down, work their way toward the river, and should be able to take that one fairly freely.
Mortifer looking pretty good so far. The newly subbed in mid lane has only had one NLC Div 2 game under his belt, but the second one, he's yet again up in CS, able to find a kill and assist. So participate in both of those kills around the Herald fight. I think members in this game have been performing well. KZ from London United did have a disappointing start to the split after a mediocre season with Flink lead back in Telia Esports Series Denmark. But he's also playing well this game. Even in CS, hasn't died, hasn't been anywhere near death, been playing safe, scaling up. So far, I think a lot of the players that have been disappointing so far this split, for both teams, Gunkers included for AaB, have been stepping up this game.
Yeah, 2 kills for the set on the top side. May well get punished now. Fate Sealed is available. Don't look to pull the trigger on it that time round. But you can see pushing in that top wave, Drake up in 50. Icegale doesn't have TP, Gunkus does, so if he was looking to make a roam down, this would have been the perfect time to do so, but he's going to look to harass under the turret instead and make that TP in from the set, the alleged main front line for AaB, a little bit harder to execute on.
Ooh, Gunkus does nicely in this trade. Icegale could look for the re-engage, but the Q misses, and that kind of denies it for now. Could easily get it back up online, however. Mortifier gets caught out in the rotation and he's taken down instantly. Bobas with the Spectrum Morph back up towards the top lane. Gunkus, Haymaker should be available, but the fail seal, the CC. Gunkus tries to do what he can. One last auto from the turret is not enough. Here comes Bobas, Heartbreaker available. Icy Gale, no flash, Spectrum Morph misses. Heartbreaker used, doesn't connect either, but Dunlozy gets taken down. It is Bobas who picked it up. Toon, who misses the death sentence as well. It is a 2-for-1 overall.
Yep. Getting caught out in the mid lane, Mortifer unfortunately in a little bit of trouble. Ribery could be in trouble.
Might just get solo killed here. Does have a lot of damage with the 4-shot. Minions are helping him as well. Curtain call. KZ, can you dance around like you're playing Just Dance? Dukes too, but he misses the 4th shot and Ribery unable to get the kill. Now KZ might look for the re-engage. The spot lane also turning out that they don't just want to farm.
Yeah, Ribery's still got both summoners up, so it should be fairly favourable for him to stay around in this lane. Of course, Senna's in 8 sustain, going to help her out a little bit more so for the time being. But as you mentioned, 2-for-1 then in favour of AaB. It was always going to be difficult for London United to get the dive and get out. They kind of had to make a decision whether they wanted to go for the dive and sort of risk losing one or whether they could have backed away and had it just be that 1-for-0 from Mortifer going down in the mid lane. But as we sort of illustrated, as we mentioned here, the ability to place down Rift Herald, cause that pressure point in the mid lane, and then move into the Drake. Not necessarily the way they went about it, but certainly a contributing factor. Bobus not particularly able to walk into the river. Divinus, with level 6 here, could be looking for a Ribery, but he gets picked up by that captive audience. And for the time being here, these AD carries remain deathless, remain as though their fights not particularly relevant here. The 3 assists from KZ currently, all off of that top lane ulti around the Herald earlier on.
13 minutes in, the defending UKEL champions, and they will be forever. London United are 1,000 goal ahead, going up against AaB, obviously a Danish organization, but if you want to dive deeper into that, you'll have to wait, because a top lane dive is on its way. Icy Gale flashes up very soon. What will he do about it? He's been outplaying it so far, clearing the minions. Is the damage there? Fate Seal misses. He might have found himself a way out, Soul Unbound, but his rest of the team is coming up to help him out, but the showstopper is big. But the burst from Mortifer is very good as well. Gunk is now in a 1v2. His mid laner is not here yet. The ultimate from Mortifer misses, however, and they disengage. A 1-for-1 as AaB pulled the trigger, was able to take the first kill, but a good re-engage from the side of London United did
bit of
make it a
reverse
1-for-1.
Bit of reverse deja vu right there, but this time AaB the ones going for the dive on the top side, admitting that they're likely to lose one off the back of it. Turret plates going down mean that Gunkus, when this wave comes through, is likely to take first brick for himself. A strong showing from him thus far in the top lane, able to find that dive with the team, and he's not going to elect to go for the turret, given Dunlosi is here. A very wise play to not sacrifice your own life for the sake of first brick. Could find a little bit of a scrap here in this mid lane. Not going to be the case. Currently, though, that top lane has certainly been Icy Gale favoured. There was a little bit of help given to him. That top lane dive where they go 1-for-1, actually still favourable for Icy Gale, of course, just because the jungler is dying for London United side versus taking down the set, who obviously, when you're in that situation, your top laner still gets farmed, theirs doesn't. You quite happily sacrifice a jungler in that case. But going forward, we talked about how execution was going to be very important for all these teams, and it is going to come down to these strong team fights on both sides. KZ has been able to get through one of Senna's weakest points, being that sort of laning phase. We're now entering the mid game where she may well be quite difficult to execute on, but as soon as that Rage Blade, even just a Rage Knife, starts to come through, she will be able to start really hurting if she's given free time to hit.
So Herald has spawned, another fight might be on the cards, but as Ribery is down towards the bot lane and they do see KZ heading out towards that Herald, they will give it up for free, which does mean I can finally get to talk about AaB. Obviously a Danish organization, so they are a bit closer to my heart than anyone else in the league, other than the other Danes, of course. It's an organization that has never quite been able to find success playing in second, third division in the Danish league. Challenger Series Denmark, maybe making up to League Championship Denmark once, but they were never able to really make it big, really hit to Esports Series Denmark. But suddenly, they got accepted into the NLC Division 1 qualifiers and did build a pretty good roster consisting of some of the second place players from PG, which was Protecting Guardians, a team that got second place in Telly Esports Series Denmark summer, but they didn't quite manage to make it up to Division 1. They did make it to Division 2 though.
And now they're going to be looking to convert their, we'll call it failure from Division 1 into Division 2 and maybe try and make the playoffs, try and extend what was a really strong game against natives into a really strong week here. Good little scraps. Oh, Icy Gale so far in this top lane has been utilizing the Soul Unbound incredibly effectively when dodging out on Facebreaker or Haymaker. Either one of those two cooldowns, if they miss on the set, champion becomes incredibly underwhelming, so using the E off of Icy Gale to dodge out on that has proved fairly effective. That time around in the top lane trade, you got to see why that's quite a bit of an issue when he does eat those, because he takes a very large chunk of damage, and KZ
playing it very safely. Toon does have the flash, however. Oh, mistimes it. Misses the death sentence. Oh, it's horrible, but Bobas does connect his Spectral Maw, and KZ will taste death for the first time this game. Ribery picks that one up.
Slightly late on the flash right there. It's hard to predict a Viego W flash, but you kind of have to preempt those there. If Bobas is still charging for you with malice in his eyes, you have to try and predict those ones. The second you get stunned the first time round, it's unfortunately doomsday for you. Flash and heal coming through a little too late there does give AaB an avenue into the spot lane turret. They're going to be able to take this one for themselves and crack open their second turret of the game. Second Rift Herald going to be utilized in this mid lane, and I love doing this up against Victor compositions as well. Another similar situation to the Zillion. Getting damage on a Victor turret is incredibly hard to do when he reaches that level 7 threshold. Now he's got to the point where 2 Rift Heralds have charged into his turret and there's simply nothing he can do. They get taken down, and now he has to lose his Bastion of Hope really in that mid lane, and opens up a little bit of the jungle for London United to start putting some vision down just in time here for the spawn of the third Infernal Drake. But you can see 5 members of AaB all looking to make their way down. Icy Gale has TP'd in as well. Big threshold's just been hit from AaB that they could win this fight.
Okay, HP, remember there's no Heartbreaker, but the Chaos Storm is there, and Gungus picks up the first kill onto the AD carry. KZ is gone. The Fade Shield gets denied. A beautiful showstopper by the man who has had such a bad split. He's playing perfectly this game around that set. Gungus. Now, though, the showstopper has already been used. It's the Fade's call, however, that will turn out to close out this fight. It is AaB who pick up the Drake. And Gungus, my man. He knows how to play against this set. He knows how to play this matchup. And he has improved so much from week 1 and week 2.
Yeah, I mean, this guy currently really pumping out the damage that he needed to. Obviously, got himself that last pick, got his choice. Bobas now going for the fight.
But he does have his mid lane liner. 1v2 situation isn't something Icy Gale is able to outplay. And AaB, what are we? They're having another 1k gold ahead. They were 1k behind before. how are these guys improving so fast, considering they were leagues behind in week 2?
Yeah, well, we'll have to have a look here because we get another glimpse at that fight from
Eyes and
prior.
Gunkers.
You can see London UU, right? They start off the Drake, hook hits KZ. That's perfect to start things off. But then, of course, as you mentioned, Gunkers just takes the Yone into the backline and makes his life impossible. There's a triple fear from Mortifer there that does lower or does disengage the fight entirely. And then, of course, Curtain Call not quite hitting its marker. But I think that honestly, that hook from Toon was everything. They pick off the AD carry before the fight even starts, and London U just never had a chance from there. CCing down Icy Gale so that he can't find access to the backline easily was just everything that was needed to happen. And I think that we've got a good foreshadow for what needs to happen for the rest of those fights. Obviously, Miracle hooks onto the AD carry. We've seen them a few times now, but relying on those consistently, maybe not so literally reliable. But Gunkers being able to play team fights like that is incredibly repeatable.
But just like the Venus did yesterday, a good hook onto the AD carry can clearly win you a fight. KZ was able to put out a lot of damage if he didn't get hooked. So Toon, stepping up when he needs to, has had a few blunders so far this game, but when it counts, he is able to find the death sentence. Overall, these kills have been put on the jungler Bopas, who has had a weaker early game compared to what he's had before, but he's playing this fight very nicely with his team. 5-2 and 3, a strong front line alongside Gunkers.
And you can see that these team fights thus far are going the ways of the engager, and I think that that's something that will happen to be the case throughout the duration of this match. We look at the London United squad, they have got 4 very strong divers with a center over the top to provide Dawning Shadow. If they're able to utilize those flank angles, find those engages using Zinzao, using Vex, using Yone, Rakan as well, all of these guys go forward so well. That's when their composition is going to be at its strongest. Gunkers only is able to ulti one person. If there's 4 people diving into your backline and you can take one of them out, yeah, that's great, but it's not ideal. You know, Ribery and Blueben still have to be positioning incredibly well and safely to keep themselves alive. And Victor, of course, a fairly mid-range mage, doesn't mind it people diving on him, does have the Gravity Well and Chaos Storm to make those dives a little bit more difficult. But London U thus far, the reason we've seen them struggling in these later in these mid-game fights, it's because they've not been able to find those engages on their own terms. And I think that that's something that going forward they're going to need to start looking for. Perfect way to start doing that is clearing out the vision, and they're opting into that right now. With that mid-tier 1 being down, they've got themselves the foundation here, the building blocks of a good way into this game. So we'll have to see if they can start to utilize that as a whole. They don't have Soul Point, but they do have another Dragon attempt spawning in about 90 seconds time. So getting this vision down in the bot side of the Rift, you can see certainly something that they're going to be very happy about, where AaB on the flip side, they've got a little bit of scattered vision here. 2 control wards on the top side of the river, not particularly in the right place, unless they're going to try and just take a Baron on the time of the Drake spawn.
So you talked about being able to find fights on their own term. We know what AaB has to do. They have to find a good hook. Gunkers has to be able to deny Icy Gale the opportunity. But what about London United? Is it an Icy Gale flank? Is it Dunlosi getting a good third auto attack with his Q, being able to knock up Ribery or Blueben and instantly shut them down? Mortifer finding a good engage. What is London United's best term and best way of playing these team fights?
It's all of those things together, right? If all of those things come through at one point, there's no chance that Ribery and Blueben survive. The, of course, issue is that getting that synergy and getting those executes on a play is very difficult to coordinate between all 4 people. And particularly when you are then exposing your center to Bobus, for example, in the backline, who currently 5-2 and 3 with the stopwatch, with the plated steel caps, as well as the Sterex Gauge, it's going to be incredibly difficult to take down. And if he gets one single reset, he's going to be ready to go.
Call. Luckily though, KZ has a good team, and they're nice enough to block all the shots. Dunlosi gets taken quite low, 10 seconds on the Drake. Eyes on Mortifer, Icy Gale, and Toon. These are the guys looking for the engages. Can Toon get another great pick? Can Icy Gale and Mortifer find the huge engage?
I think I have to give this. They just lost a load of HP on Dunlosi.
Yeah, but Icy Gale looking for it. He was on a flank angle, but now he's just part of the rest of his team. Drake has been started up. There is no curtain call. Gunkis, can you find it? Divinus goes in, the hook onto him and he gets taken down instantly. Dunlosi now silenced. A very, very good crescent guard, but look, there is so much damage on Icy Gale. Gunkis deletes him. The main man from London United removed from the rift time and time again. It is AaB playing up to their level, being so much better than we have seen them be before. This team is a joy to watch.
And they just win out in the team fight, being able to find the good hook. Just Rakan charging at you. Well, I'll hook you when you die. The engage from Divinus sorely lacking in that instance, and then London United start to try and build themselves a bit of a fight after that, but it's just too hard. You can see Ribery and Blueburn, they're still full HP. They're absolutely loving life in these team fights. The Baron is going to be their prize. They also get the Dragon. They're currently 2 out of 2 for Infernal Drakes on their side. Baron is going to be a very little contest here, and if they're able to pick this one up to a soul point, it's not just the Infernal Soul, but it's a 4 stacked Infernal Soul. If they're able to get their hands on that, yes, we're still about 9 minutes away from it, but they are looking exceptionally strong right here in this game to take this one all the way home with a 4k gold lead. They have got so much gold on the map to go and collect. I talked about economy turrets in game number 1. This is exactly the same situation, just with even more gold in the mid lane. We get another look at this team fight, right? And Divinus hooked, and yeah, he's already dead before he even gets to do pretty much anything. And then Mortifer, his engage is onto Gunkus, not the correct target for a Vex to be trying to take on out. If Ribery is feeling confident enough to Gale Force forward, you know you're in a good position then. Toon, even on the bot side, he's 1v1ing Dunlosi in the Dragon Pit as a Thresh. Everything was going well for London U in that, for AaB rather, in that team fight.
The redemption arc for AaB has really started to be clear. Taking down 4 native yesterday, now looking to take down London United. People were laughing, looking at this roster being, why is this even in Division 2? I'm gonna be honest, I rated them bottom of my tier list as well, but I might need to change that because these players are starting to synergize well together. They know what they want to do. They know how to execute the team fights. And at 25 minutes, they are breaking open London United space.
Inhibitor falls, and London United, they tried to go for a bit of a cross map. You can see Icy Gale, he's working his way in on that bot lane, trying to take down that tier 2, and honestly, I approve of that message. If you're going to try and take that 5v5 around the base, it's still exceptionally hard. I don't know that you're able to win it and defend your base, but remember, AaB have just taken 3 turrets. They've gone from mid lane tier 1 and just taken the inhibitor. They're going to keep on going. They've still got Baron for another minute and a little bit here. So this top lane inhibitor turret is certainly by no means safe. And Isagale now trying to come back and take this fight. He's got GA, 3 items Gione, could win this fight.
Maybe, just maybe Mortifer can do something.
Oh!
Icy Gale, the main man they've been counting on. Mortifer follows up. If AaB win this, they will surely have done it. And somehow they are. I believe there was a gigantic haymaker. What a fight. Mortifer and the engage, everything was there. But London United, too far behind. Shut down. Ribery, Bobus, Gunkers, Blueburn and Toon are running towards the base. Are running towards Icy Gale, looking for the victory, wanting to taste victory 2 times in a row. AaB, how did they win that fight? Everything looked to have fallen into place for London United, but AaB turn it around again.
An absolute wallet slap right there. AaB just had too much gold. London United didn't have enough, and the Nexus is their prize. With a very strong team fight through the mid game, they're able to build up enough of a lead, and despite Icy Gale, despite that incredible engage, Mortifer also being able to follow up on that, it wasn't enough. London United didn't have the gold to deal with it. They didn't have the damage to go through. And AaB, they find the win. They find themselves their second one in as many games to get themselves 2-4 in the record.
I'm gonna be honest, I thought that was it. When Icy Gale got the Fade Seal, when the Shadow Surge on top of it, the fear, everything was there. But somehow it wasn't enough. Ribery managed to survive. Blueburn managed to survive. And AaB, now I'm not gonna be honest. Then Danish teams, they're 2-0 today. 2-0.
It's the Duckling buff.
They were both 1-4 earlier. Yeah. And I'm not directly saying it's a Duckling buff, but maybe they, want to impress me. I don't know. Or maybe they're just leveling up their game, which is probably the more likely answer. But wow, these 2 games, they have been great to watch. The surprising underdog team 1-4 stepping up massively. These games were not even close. I was expecting them to be 30, 40-minute games where both teams were battling gruesomely in these fights around Drakes, Elders, Barons. but there's not been a single fight around that yet because one team has been so far ahead that they were able to take it. I'm going to throw it to a short break, then we will be back with winner and loser interview, and I'm excited to talk to these OB players and find out what they have been fed this week. 2-0 against Natives and London United. See you after the break.